What's going on, everyone? It's Ben from YGO from Zero, back with another Yugi-Kaiba format video, and this time I'm finally showing off a deck that's not Soul Control, and this deck is what I like to call Worm Control. Now, this deck is not very popular. In fact, I'm one of the only few people who play it. I know that the concept has been experimented before, but I don't think it ever really caught on with the general player base. So, as far as I know, I'm the only one who really plays this deck, but I think it's a very fun option to play, and I think it's a really unique deck. And while it may not be necessarily as good as Soul Control, it can counter Soul Control decently well. So, let me start by explaining the basic concept of this deck. Basically, the idea is to use things like Wicked Worm Beast and also Ultimate Offering during your opponent's battle phase to enable you to have a pretty empty board, which can then counter things like a Soul Control strategy, which needs monsters on the board to actually work. But beyond just countering Soul Control, it can also make, board clears less profitable, right? If you've got one beater on the field and you just keep bringing out a Wicked Worm Beast, then you might not even have two monsters on the field to use like a Dark Hole or a Raigeki on very profitably. So this deck can dodge around that a bit. Wicked Worm Beast itself can also dodge around things like Fissure, so it can be really tough for your opponent to actually get rid of Wicked Worm Beast without using something like a Trap Hole or a Man-Eater Bug. And so this is just an extremely pesky card, and if you can hit in with it every turn, which this deck can do somewhat well, using things like Man-Eater Bug and Wall of Illusion to sort of clear your opponent's board during their turn, then hitting in every turn with Wicked Worm Beast and maybe some other cards can be extremely good. Ultimate Offering enables you to set Wall of Illusion and Man-Eater Bug during your opponent's battle phase to make it more likely that their effects will go off and that they won't just be like soul controlled away. And Ultimate Offering is just good in general as well for doing things like dodging Trap Hole, getting a lot of damage on board to finish off your opponent out of nowhere. And it's just a very versatile card that I think fits very well into this deck in particular. But now that I've explained the basic concept, let's dive in to a breakdown card by card. So, of course, we have the three main beaters: Login, Battleox, Neo, the level 4 monsters with the highest attack in the game. These are very important for getting over your opponent's beaters, getting over your opponent's potential defense position monsters with something like a Reinforcements. So these are very important to the deck, even though they do stick around on the field to be gotten rid of with things like Fissure or Soul Exchange or what have you. Next we have the Wicked Worm Beast, which is the backbone of the deck. 3 copies may be a bit much, so I think maybe you could cut a Worm Beast and put in something else. But in the worst case scenario, if you draw multiple Wicked Worm Beasts, you can always set one as just a chump blocker if you really need to. And if you do have multiple Wicked Worm Beasts, you can actually use Ultimate Offering to bring out more than one in one turn and get in for even more damage. So having multiple Wicked Worm Beasts is honestly not the worst thing in the world. We also have 3 Man-Eater Bug, 3 Wall of Illusion. These are great at clearing your opponent's board during their turn. If you set these off of something like Ultimate Offering, then I think that's the best use for them. But if you don't have Ultimate Offering, still just setting them can also be extremely good. And Wall of Illusion serves as sort of like a defender on its own, which can be tough for your opponent to get over, just like a Giant Soldier of Stone would be tough for your opponent to get over. And lastly, we also have a Summoned Skull. We have 1 copy of this. It's mainly to pair with the Change of Heart, because this sort of gives us the removal option that Soul Control does, where we can Change of Heart an opponent's monster, tribute over it for a Summoned Skull. You don't always draw the 2 in conjunction, but they're each good enough cards on their own that you don't really mind if you don't draw the combo. You can always bring out a Summoned Skull if you really need to, through just tributing one of your own monsters. And you can always just Change of Heart one of your opponent's monsters to do something like trigger one of their Man-Eater Bugs, or just to attack in for more damage. So these are both good cards to have in the deck. Moving on to the other cards, we also have the other limited spells that are very powerful. Dark Hole, Monster Reborn, Pot of Greed, Raigeki. Incredibly strong cards. Every deck should be playing them, pretty much. We also have 3 Fissure as a good form of removal. This deck can struggle with removal if it's going up against a more defensive deck, because we don't have a variety of tribute monsters to be able to easily get over like a 2k defender or something. So the fissures are very important. And we also have 2 Swords Revealing Light, because occasionally this deck can take some time to get its pieces together. Like, it's not necessary that you have Ultimate Offering and Wicked Wormbeast together in hand, but it really does help the deck out a lot when you do have them together. And so Swords Revealing Light can buy you time to draw into that pairing, and just buy you time if you're in a rough spot and need to stall for a bit. As a note, we've decided not to include a D-Spell in the main deck, mainly because there's not really the room for it unless you cut a Wicked Wormbeast, and I don't necessarily think it's worth cutting a monster to do that. 19 monsters is a bit much, but D-Spell just doesn't do enough on its own to, I think, justify removing a monster. And the deck can honestly wait out of Swords decently well. You know, if you've got Ultimate Offering on the field and active, then you don't even need to commit to the board while Swords is on. You can just wait till they do have something, and then if they attack in, use Ultimate Offering to, like, set a monster from your hand. So, you know, D-Spell isn't the best inclusion in the deck. It would be interesting to see, though, if you swapped it in for a Wicked Wormbeast to see how that would affect the deck's playstyle, but I've never really missed D-Spell in the main, so I don't really think it matters that much. And for the traps, we have 3 Reinforcements, 3 Trap Hole, 3 Waboku, the standard trap lineup in Yugi-Kaiba format, and we also have 2 Ultimate Offering. Now, you might be wondering, why 2 of this card? Well, Ultimate Offering is kind of a weird card in that, you know, you only really want to see 1 during the game, but you really do want to see that 1. So, if you include 3 Ultimate Offering, right, you have the chance of just drawing 2 dead cards over the course of the game, because you could draw all 3, and it's just basically a useless card when you've already got 1 Ultimate Offering on the field, unless your opponent has a Trap Master. And at least game 1, they're probably not going to have a Trap Master in the main deck to deal with this. So 3 Ultimate Offering can be a bit bricky. 1 Ultimate Offering makes it a bit harder to show up. And you really do want this card to show up. You can win without drawing Ultimate Offering, but Ultimate Offering just ties so much of the deck together that you really want to see a copy of it over the course of the game. So we've included 2 Ultimate Offering here instead of 3 or 1 as kind of a middle ground. Yes, you can brick on the second copy, but at least it's just 1 brick in your deck instead of 2, and including 2 copies does make it more likely to show up. So that's why we have this sort of weird 2 of in the deck. Is it perfect? Maybe not. You know, maybe if people experiment with this more, they'll find that it's worth it to play 3 and just go for the bricks, or, you know, it's worth it to just include 1 and include a different card in that slot instead, like maybe a D-Spell or another monster. It's tough to say. I will say I've not been too upset at having 2 of these in the deck, and while it has bricked for me on occasion, it hadn't bricked me too terribly, and I have been able to see this card most games when I've wanted to. And lastly, for the side deck, we have 3 Trap Masters to deal with the more stall-based decks that rely on Ultimate Offering as well. And we also have a bit of a soul control package. So in games 2 and 3, if we decide that this deck isn't a good matchup, or if we want to just completely switch over to soul control because we think that they're going to overside against this strategy, then we have 3 Giant Soldier of Stone to swap out for the 3 Wall of Illusion. We have 2 Summon Skull and 2 Soul Exchange. We can swap these out for some Wicked Wormbeasts and an Ultimate Offering. And then we've got a pretty competent Soul Control deck. We also have 3 Great White if we want to get a bit more offensive. It's a 1600 beater, which of course isn't as good as something like a Battle Ox or Neo, but it is the next highest attack in the game, and we're playing this one over the others because Umi Beatdown is occasionally a strategy that you'll encounter, at least more often than something like Yami Beatdown. So its typing can have some niche applications, but generally we just play this to have an additional beater that we can bring in if we need it. And we have a D-Spell in case we're playing a deck that relies more heavily on Swords Revealing Light, or that sets its spells a fair bit. And we also have an additional Ultimate Offering in case we don't think they're going to side against this strategy, or if we are up against a deck where it doesn't really matter if we brick with multiple Ultimate Offering, but we really want to see Ultimate Offering. So now that I've covered the deck, let's dive into the duels. I think the duels will really clear up what this deck does well and sort of show how it plays, because it is an unintuitive sort of deck idea, or at least it's a bit less intuitive than Soul Control is. So let's dive into a game and illustrate how it plays. Okay, we've got another duel against Ellie Tin Can. This time, this is the first of our duels for the day, so we don't know what each other is playing, but we are playing the Worm Control deck, so let's see how it works. And we do win the rock, paper, scissors, so we will get to go first here. And this is not the best hand. This is not really the hand that you want to see with this deck. As I mentioned before, like, Wicked Wormbeast isn't the worst card to brick on, but having multiple copies this early in the game without an Ultimate Offering does make it kind of a dead card in our hand, because we really only need one at this stage unless they choose to trap hole it. Battle Ox is okay as a beater, but we don't really have any reinforcements or any traps to protect it from something like a Lodge-In. And at least Wall of Illusion is a decent defender, and we'll clear the way for a Wicked Wormbeast to get in for some damage. So I actually think the best move to do with this hand is to set Wall of Illusion and set Monster Reborn as a bluff. The hope being that they attack into Wall of Illusion on their turn, and then we can summon out a Wicked Wormbeast to get in for some damage next turn. And that's what we're doing. So now if they attack into the Wall of Illusion, that will be very good for us, but they could just choose to set a monster of their own, which would be a bit less good. And they are going to do that, which is unfortunate. We draw another beater, so we could potentially feel comfortable just attacking in with one of them into their set. Or we could bring out the Wicked Wormbeast and try poking into their set. And we do decide to go for a beater. We do have the Neo in hand in case they get rid of our Battle Ox, so it's not the worst thing in the world. And at least if it's a Maneater bug, you know, they're not going to try and pop the Wicked Wormbeast, because the Maneater bug is one of the only ways to get rid of Wicked Wormbeast. So it's a Giant Soldier of Stone, though, so we're just going to take 300. We're kind of open to a Raigeki here, which would really stink, but nothing we can do about that. They're going to bring out a Lodge-In, and they are just going to clear the Battle Ox, which is unfortunate, and is a reason why we potentially should have just summoned a Wicked Wormbeast and attacked him with that, especially given we have another Wicked Wormbeast in hand, but, you know, who's to say. We draw Raigeki, which is a very good card here, because we can't clear either of those monsters without the Raigeki. So we actually do have the option of using Raigeki now, and then just getting in for damage with Wicked Wormbeast, which I don't think is the worst option, but I think we're holding off because, as is, they don't have a way to clear Wall of Illusion right now, so, you know, we might hope that they try and commit more to the board. And the only flaw with that sort of plan is that if they attack into Wall of Illusion, they'll bounce a monster back to hand, so it won't be on the field to Raigeki with. But I don't hate holding the Raigeki for a later time. And they are going to attack into the wall. Lodgin's going to bounce back to hand. They're going to set one, pass back to us. We have reinforcements, which is not bad. So we can set the reinforcements, potentially get over their wall with a Neo on our next turn, but it's not the best. We'll set a Wicked Worm Beast in case they have a Fisher here, because we have an additional Wicked Worm Beast in hand, so we're not too torn up about losing the Wicked Worm Beast if they do attack over it. They're going to draw, they're going to summon out the, or they're going to switch the Giant Soldier Stone to attack mode. They're not going to summon it out. And they're going to attack the Wall of Illusion. This means that they likely have a Dark Hole in hand. So they're going to get to bounce that Giant Soldier back. Oh, and they're going to Swords. So I guess what this was they were trying to get us to waste our Man-Eater Bug because they figured that we set a Man-Eater Bug there. And if they have no monsters on the field, then we can't use Man-Eater Bug on one of their monsters. So I like that plan a lot. Unfortunately for them, it was just the Wicked Worm Beast. So, you know, we're not gonna pop anything on our field. They're just gonna summon out a Battle Ox, which is fine by us. And the turn will end. And this actually brings up a subtle thing about Wicked Worm Beast's effect that doesn't often come up, but it can. It's that the Wicked Worm Beast only returns to the hand during the end phase of the person who controls it. So, since we control the Wicked Worm Beast, at the end of our opponent's turn, it won't actually return to our hand. It will only return to our hand at the end of our turn. This really doesn't come up often, but it can be very good to know, especially if something happened where, like, we set the Wicked Worm Beast and our opponent Change of Hearted it, flipped it face up. They would be able to return the Wicked Worm Beast to our hand at the end of their turn because they currently controlled it. And they can choose whether to resolve the effect of Change of Heart to return it to our field, or the effect of the Wicked Worm Beast to return to our hand. They can choose the order in which to resolve those in the end phase. It's a bit of a complicated and subtle thing that can come up. It doesn't come up often, though, so I wouldn't worry about it too much. But we draw a Trap Hole, and it's not the best. You know, we can save it for the Lodging that we know they have in hand, which is not the worst, but we'll set the Trap Hole. Wicked Worm Beast comes back to hand. They're going to Fisher away our wall, which is not the best for us, but they'll be able to attack in with the Battle Ox and pass back to us. We draw another wall, which is pretty nice. We're just going to set that, pass back to them. And they're going to attack into the wall. Battle Ox will bounce back to hand, and they'll set one, summon a Battle Ox, which is fine by us. We have the Neo to potentially get over it. And we draw a Lodgin, which is pretty good. We're not going to summon it because we're a bit worried about board clears. So if they do have another Fisher, they can get in for another 17. But at least we have the Trap Hole to deal with whatever other monster they bring out. They're going to draw, summon out another Battle Ox, and we will Trap Hole that. It would have been best to use that on the Lodgin, but we just can't afford to take 3,400 points of damage. So we will have to use it now. They're going to attack into the wall, which means they likely have reinforcements, and they will trigger that. So their board is now cleared. And we do have Ultimate Offering, finally, which is better late than never. But that's not the worst. So we're going to summon out a Neo, and we're just going to attack in for 17. And then we'll set the Ultimate Offering, pass back to them. We don't have any defenders to set off the Ultimate Offering during their battle phase. But if we can summon the Lodgin, then that at least will be able to block like a 1700 beater potentially. Of course, if they have a Trap Hole, that won't matter, but we can hope. They'll just set one, pass back to us. We're going to summon out the Wicked Worm Beast because we're pretty sure that's a Giant Soldier of Stone because we know they have a Giant Soldier of Stone in hand. So we know we can get over that with a Reinforcements. Oh, but we're actually going to activate Ultimate Offering to bring out another Wicked Worm Beast. So we're going to try and get in for a ton of damage here. So we're going to attack with the Neo, Reinforcements, and then attack in with the two Wicked Worm Beasts. and they will Woboku that. So that's pretty great because we were able to clear a monster and use up a Woboku, and we'll only be leaving one monster on the field at the end of the turn, so they might not necessarily want to board clear. So that's really good. I also think that bringing out 2 Wicked Worm Beast was very good if it was a Man-Eater bug, because if it was a Man-Eater bug, they'd have to choose between one of our Wicked Worm Beasts, and we'd still be able to get in for 1,400. So that move was the correct play on my part, I think. And I'm just going to set this other trap hole that we drew, end turn, get back the 2 Wicked Worm Beasts, and we have the potential to threaten a lot of damage on their next turn. If they choose to summon a monster, we can trap hole it and bring out 2 Wicked Worm Beasts again and threaten a lot of damage if they don't have Woboku. They're just going to set another monster, pass back to us, and we don't have an easy way to get over it if it is a giant soldier. So we're going to bring out a Wicked Worm Beast. We are going to pay 5 to bring out another Wicked Worm Beast, just in case, you know, it is a Man-Eater bug. We can get in for some damage here. So we're going to attack in. It is unfortunately a giant soldier, so we won't be able to get in for damage. But we only spent 500 life points on that, so it's not the worst thing in the world. They're going to bring out a Battle Lock, or not a Battle Lock, they're going to bring out a Lodge-In, and we will trap hole that to protect our Neo. And we draw a Fisher, which is the perfect draw for this point. This enables us to bring out 2 Wicked Worm Beasts, Fisher away their giant soldier, and attack in for a ton of damage if they don't have Woboku, and it looks like they don't, so now they're down to 1050. And we'll pass back to them, get the Wicked Worm Beast back in hand, and they'll draw. They're going to set again, set another, pass back to us, and we actually have a bit of a debate here. They didn't Woboku last turn, which could just mean that they're saving a Woboku. But if they don't have a Woboku, period, and that set card is not a Woboku, then if we Raigeki here, we can just win the game. So there is the debate about firing the Raigeki off now. They've used up 2 giant soldiers of stone, so, you know, that could just be a Man-Eater bug, in which case we don't need to use the Raigeki. We could just bring out 2 Wicked Worm Beasts and threaten lethal that way. So there are a couple different options that we have here, and it's unclear what exactly the best option is. But we're going to bring out Wicked Worm Beast. We're going to pay 500 to bring out a Wicked Worm Beast. And I guess we're just going to attack in. And if it's a Man-Eater bug, we could just win here. So it is unfortunately a giant soldier, so we won't have a chance to threaten lethal. We'll set a Raigeki here, and you might be wondering why we did that, because that's a pretty high impact spell. So if they are able to snipe it with something like a D-spell, then we could be in a fair amount of trouble. But the reason for that, and something that you have to always keep in mind when you're playing this deck, is that if you have 7 cards in your hand at the end of the turn, or more cards than 7, you'll have to discard down to 6, just because of just the hand size limit. Wicked Worm Beast getting added back to hand does count towards that hand size limit. So at the end of our turn, we're getting 2 cards back into our hand, and if we did have the Raigeki, then we'd have to discard a card, because we have 7 cards in hand. So we do have to set here in order to play around that. So we'll get the 2 Wicked Worm Beasts back to hand. They're going to Soul Exchange the Neo, bring out a Summon Skull, which is great because now we have a good board to Raigeki. And we'll draw another Wicked Worm Beast, which is kind of crazy. We're just going to summon the first one, and then we're going to Raigeki. We don't need to really summon more than this because, you know, they're at 1,050, right? They either have Woboku or they don't. And if they don't, we just win with 1. So we don't need to commit more to the board. And it turns out that they did not. So, yeah, we drew the Ultimate Offering late in the game, so we didn't really get to show off that side of the deck. But I think that this duel really does show how much of a threat Wicked Worm Beast can be. Like, we were able to deal a lot of damage and threaten a lot of damage each turn once we had control of the board, because we had multiple Wicked Worm Beasts to just bring out with an Ultimate Offering. And they didn't really have a way to deal with the Wicked Worm Beast because it was always just back in our hand at the end of our turn. So even though we did brick a little on it, it turned out not to be much of a brick at the end of the game because it was very, very useful for us. And that is kind of the philosophy of this deck. Just if we can get control of the board and just keep bringing out Wicked Worm Beast each turn to attack in for damage, then we'll hopefully be able to win. And we did that game, so. They're going first this time. We're going second. I forget whether we sided out of the Wicked Worm Beast package and went for a Soul Control build instead. I think we kept in the Wicked Worm Beast stuff, though, because it didn't look like they were playing too much of a defensive deck. So I think we're comfortable keeping it like this. Although we did side out the Wall of Looms for Giant Soldiers of Stone, interestingly enough. So maybe that does indicate that we sided into Soul Control. But only time will tell. They're just going to set 2, pass back to us. We've got a pretty good hand. We've got the Ultimate Offering to set the Giant Soldier of Stone on their turn in the battle phase. If they do clear one of our beaters, we have 2 beaters to potentially test the waters with that monster. And we also have a swords if we want to test the waters that way, just to see if it's a man-eater bug. I don't necessarily think that's the best option, but it is an option available to us. We're going to bring out the Battle Ox, and we're just going to try and attack in. And it's revealed that it's actually a Wall of Illusion. So it looks like they're siding that in, which is an interesting choice against the Worm Beast deck. But I guess they might assume that we're siding into the Soul Control package, or they just want to get monsters off of our side of the field, or just to have more defensive options in the deck as well, because the Wicked Worm Beast deck does have a lot of difficulty dealing with just opponents that have a ton of defensive monsters because it doesn't play too many Summon Skulls. So that could also just be bringing in more defensive monsters. And I think that's probably likely what it is. We have Ultimate Offering, though, to bring out Giant Soldier of Stone, so we don't need to fire the swords yet, even though our board is cleared. They're going to bring out a Neo, and they're just going to attack in with the Neo. We are going to fire the Ultimate Offering, pay 5, and set the Giant Soldier of Stone during their battle phase. And they will not be able to get over the Giant Soldier, which is pretty good. We're going to bring out Lodge in, and we're going to switch Giant Soldier to attack. We're going to Fisher away the Wall of Illusion. This may be a bit greedy. If they have reinforcements for the Neo, then we don't really have anything to get over that with the Lodge in. But we might as well go greedy. We have swords to stall them. We have Waboku to stall them. We have Ultimate Offering to bring out a Battle Ox from hand if they summon out a 1700 beater. So I figure we've got a bunch of ways to recoup from this if they do board clear next turn or if they do have reinforcements here. So I think it's worth taking the risk to make an incredibly aggressive play. So we're going to Fisher the wall, we're going to attack into the Neo, and that will connect, so we will be able to sink in a fair amount of damage. And they're just going to set 1 pass, so no board clear, and we did draw the Wicked Worm Beast, which is a great draw here, because we already have monsters on board, and we don't really want to commit more, but this will commit more damage to the field, and it will make this Man-Eater Bug a lot more of an interesting choice here. I think they're probably likely going to get rid of the Wicked Worm Beast because they don't want to take 2,700 points of damage, and Wicked Worm Beast will just return to hand at the end of the turn. So I think that makes sense, and they do that. We're just going to attack in with the Giant Soldier, though, so we will be able to still sink in some damage here. They're going to set another monster, pass back to us. Trap Hole's a very good draw here, but it won't help us now, but it'll help us if they ever do try and stick a beater onto the field. We're going to attack them with the Lodge in, and they are going to get rid of the Giant Soldier. I think that makes sense. They're bleeding damage every turn, so getting rid of the Lodge in will help them clear a big beater on our side of the field, but this way they don't take damage. And if they do have something like a Fisher in hand to deal with the Lodge in next turn, then you know, they might as well just get rid of the Soldier of Stone, clear the Lodging on their turn, and just prevent themselves from taking damage. But we're going to set a trap hole, pass back to them. They're going to bring out Neo, which we are okay with. If they do clear the Lodging, we can always use Ultimate Offering to bring out a Battle Ox. They do clear the Lodging, so we are going to pay 500, bring out Battle Ox, and they're just going to try attacking into it. We can actually Woboku here to protect the Battle Ox. I think that's probably the best play, but we do just let it go. I'm not sure if that was the correct move. I think it probably would have been better to keep the Battle Ox on field to keep attacking in, especially because we don't have any monsters, and we do have a trap hole to back it up if they try getting over it with something like a Lodging. But, you know, I guess this deprives them of the Neo either way, and we do get to keep the Woboku in case they make a big push, so I guess I can see it. And we do draw a monster anyways, so we are rewarded for our bad play. And Giant Soldier will be able to attack in. They're going to try bringing out a Great White. It's not the monster that we really want to trap hole, but we kind of do have to trap hole it to protect the Giant Soldier. We could also just Woboku when they attack into the Giant Soldier and switch Giant Soldier to defense. But I think trap holding is the better option, and we do trap hole it. So we will be able to attack into with the Giant Soldier again. We do have reinforcements to back up the Giant Soldier a little bit. They're going to bring out a Lodging. That's kind of rough. This means that reinforcements won't necessarily protect Giant Soldier, but instead just trade with the Lodging. I still think it's probably worth doing, especially because we don't really have any monsters or any way to clear the Lodging at this point. So we will just reinforcements, wipe out both monsters, they'll pass back to us. We draw another Swords, which isn't the best. We have a Swords already in play on the field set, so not the best draw for us, but we're just going to pass back to them, hope they don't have a monster. And it turns out they don't, which is pretty good for us. We're going to chain Ultimate Offering to itself, which is a bit of a counterintuitive play, but basically what this does is if we only have one monster in hand, if we activate Ultimate Offering the first time, then that sets us up to potentially normal summon. But we can still chain Ultimate Offering to itself to normal summon later in the chain. So if we chain Ultimate Offering to itself, what will happen is we'll summon the Battle Ox Chain Link 2. Chain Link 1, Ultimate Offering, will look for a monster in our hand to summon, see that we don't have any, and just resolve without effect. So basically, it will just fizzle out. Nothing will happen at Chain Link 1. But since we summoned Battle Ox at Chain Link 2, and technically the last thing that happened was Ultimate Offering resolving without effect at Chain Link 1, our opponent won't actually be able to activate Trap Hole against our Battle Ox. So that is a bit of tricky interaction that's very unintuitive and can be very surprising when you find out about it. But in this case, I think it's definitely the right way to go because we want this Battle Ox to actually stick on field. And it's very likely that they have a Trap Hole because they have 3 cards set and they have not used a Trap Hole all game. So we want the Battle Ox to hit the field no matter what. And this is a way to guarantee that it happens. So we do take 1,000 here, but that is a price that's worthy to pay in order to potentially cut down their life points to size. But they reveal that they're now on an Ultimate Offering of their own, which is a very interesting counter to this strategy. Because they are able to bring out a defender of their own, and we can't get over that. So we don't have any way to deal with that on our next turn either. So they're in a pretty good spot here. They're just going to set one pass back to us. We draw another Woboku, which isn't necessarily what we want to see right now. They're going to do the same thing that we did with our Ultimate Offering to make sure that they can summon out a Battle Ox of their own. They're down to a very low life point total now, which is very nice to see because it means that they're not going to have too many more options to use the ultimate offering. And we do have a Woboku to protect our Battleox in this upcoming fight. So they're going to try attacking into the Battleox. We do use the Woboku. We have a Woboku in hand to replace it afterwards. And they will use a Woboku of their own to protect their Battleox. That is very nice to see because they're at very low life points. So every Woboku that's used up brings us one step closer to killing them. And we'll draw the Wicked Worm Beast, which does nothing here, unfortunately. So we're just going to send in their Woboku, pass back to them. They're going to bring out a Lodgin, which is unfortunate to see. They're going to attack into the Battleox, and they're going to use Woboku preemptively here, just in case we have reinforcements. And I think that's a smart play on their part. But now we have the decision of whether to use Woboku on our Battleox here to protect ourselves from taking damage. I don't think necessarily we should. We've got a Swords Revealing Light to stall them further. So I think we just let the Battleox die and take the other Battleox damage. And that's what we do. So we draw Reinforcements, which isn't the worst. We can use Wicked Worm Beast to potentially get over something like a Battleox or a Lodgin using Reinforcements, but that just seems very wasteful. I think the best thing to do here is just use Swords, stall a bit longer, and that is what we do. So we're going to activate Swords, pass back to them. They can't do anything, so they'll pass back to us, and that is one of the best draws we can get because they have 3 monsters on board, and we have none. So we're going to activate Dark Hole, clear their entire board away. We're going to chain Ultimate Offering to that. Or no, wait, we're not going to chain Ultimate Offering to that. We're going to chain Ultimate Offering to itself to bring out Wicked Worm Beast in a way that dodges Trap Hole. If we had actually changed Ultimate Offering to Dark Hole, they wouldn't have been able to respond to the Wicked Worm Beast summon with a Trap Hole, but the Dark Hole would clear away our Wicked Worm Beast, so that would be a very bad thing to do. So we are just going to pay the 1,000 to make sure this sticks. They're going to pay 5, set another monster, and we're just going to attack in. It is a giant soldier, unfortunately, so we can't get over that. And we'll just pass back to them. I still think that was a very good turn. We cleared away 3 of their monsters for just 1 of our cards. We got them down to 400, so they can't use Ultimate Offering anymore. And so we're feeling pretty good about that. They're going to bring out a Great White and pass back to us. We draw a Fisher, which is not the worst. We can actually potentially clear their board a little here if we summon the Wicked Worm Beast, Fisher their giant soldier, and then try and attack him with Wicked Worm Beast using reinforcements to get over their Great White. That's going a bit all in, so I'm not sure how good of a play it is, but let's see if we decide to do it. We check their graveyard just to see if they've used up reinforcements in case we do decide to do this play. We see that they haven't used up any, so that makes it a bit more risky. But we're going to summon out the Wicked Worm Beast either way. And we are just going to try attacking into the Great White. They do have Woboku, so the Great White will not die here. And we can either use our reinforcements to keep our Wicked Worm Beast alive, or we can just let the Wicked Worm Beast die, save reinforcements for later. And, or we could use Woboku to protect our Wicked Worm Beast. That is a very good play, because now we still have reinforcements online in case we want to get over Great White, or just deal an extra bit of damage. So I think that is actually a very heads-up play. We still have a Swords in hand when this Swords expires, so yeah, I think that's actually a very good play. They'll set 1 pass back to us. Swords is now expired. And Man-Eater Bug is a very good card. We do have the life points to set it during their battle phase as well, which makes it an even better card. We're going to bring out Wicked Worm Beast and try to get over the Great White with reinforcements. And we will succeed in that. And that will drop them down to just 100 life points. So they're in a very risky spot. if we bring out any monster in defense position during their battle phase, they honestly can't even risk attacking into it. So that means that they're very unlikely to switch their Giant Soldier of Stone to attack next turn, because we do have a monster that has 100 more attack than their Giant Soldier. So they're just probably going to play it defensively next turn. And so we can feel very good about that, very good about our chances, because we have the Fisher to deal with the Giant Soldier next turn. And they will just set one pass back to us. We do Swords of Revealing Light here, and the reason for this is that it can turn off our Fisher if that's like a Wall of Illusion or an Aqua Mator. But if it's a Man-Eater Bug, the Man-Eater Bug will destroy itself. And if it is a 2K defender or just some form of defender in general, you know, we're using a Fisher on a defender either way. So I think this is the right play. It is a Man-Eater Bug, so it will destroy itself. We bring out the Wicked Worm Beast, Fisher away their monster, and they did not have another Wolboku remaining. So I hope this showed off sort of the power of this deck and how cool this deck is. And I also hope this was just a good introduction to like what this deck can do. Because when you first see the deck, you might be a bit confused by what the exact game plan is. It is kind of unintuitive until you see it in action. And you see that the Wicked Worm Beast can actually be an incredibly threatening card if there's nothing to deal with it. Like, if this Wicked Worm Beast was just a monster we could stick on the field, they could potentially get rid of it with something like a Fisher or things like that, and then we wouldn't really have a way to pressure them offensively. Let's actually see if they did have. So they had Change of Heart and Raigeki, both of which are very good cards. But they couldn't actually use either of them because we never actually stuck a monster on the field at the end of the game. So Wicked Worm Beast was able to dodge both of these incredibly powerful cards and just keep getting in, keep pressuring them, keep forcing them to pay life points to bring out monsters or to take damage. And that's something that if we had just had a regular beater, it might not have been able to do that because they could have potentially cleared it. Wicked Worm Beast can also get in for a ton of extra damage, as the first game showed, if you draw multiple of it and you draw Ultimate Offering, and can really turn the screws on your opponent, force them to have to use up their big power cards early on just to stay alive, while you often keep the Wicked Worm Beast in hand, or trade very favorably for it. Like, if you summon a Wicked Worm Beast into a trap hole, that's a trap hole they can't use on a bigger beater like La Jin that could potentially take out a 1700 beater that they have. So I think the Wicked Worm Beast is a super cool card that has some really cool applications in this format, despite seeming like absolutely terrible on first reading of the card. Like, initially when you read it, its effect just seems like a downside. But as this duel shows, that apparent downside can actually be a major benefit. I initially created this deck because in the last format that I covered, which, you know, SDYK format, which no one plays because it's not even like a real format, Worm Control was just, I think, the best aggressive deck in the format. Mill was the tier 0 deck, and Wicked Worm Control could not really beat it, but if you remove Mill from the table, Worm Control was extremely good just because all the removal spells were at 3, and so every deck was playing them at 3, and Wicked Worm Beast could dodge that. In this format, Raigeki and Dark Hole are only at 1 copy, but people still do play 3 Fisher. Soul Control plays 2 Soul Exchange, 1 Change of Heart. All those cards want you to have a monster on the field to actually get use out of them, and this deck can deprive them of those opportunities. And occasionally, against a Soul Control player, if they just have summoned Skulls and like a Soul Exchange or a Change of Heart in hand, that can be extremely devastating, as you'll just never give them an opportunity to use those and just keep getting in for damage while they're desperately trying to draw something they can use. But anyways, I've gushed about this deck long enough for today. I hope that you enjoyed these duels. I'm definitely going to show off Worm Control a bit more on the channel because this deck is one of my favorite decks to play in the format, and it holds a special place in my heart because while the concept had been experimented with before, there weren't any standard deck lists presented for it. So I built this deck pretty much independently from scratch, and it's the first deck in the format that I did that with because I was, practicing Soul Control with the standard Soul Control build. So it is nice to see a deck that I built largely on my own actually be able to win some games. But that's going to be it for this video. I hope you enjoyed as always. And until next time, I've been Ben from YGO from Zero, and I'm signing off.